Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. Now, I'm sure that you've heard a lot the last week or so regarding Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health. That's the Supreme Court case right now out of Mississippi that's dealing with abortion. And apparently, if the Supreme Court were to decide in favor of Dobbs, then what would happen is that states would go back to deciding whether or not for themselves that abortion would be legal in their particular state. It wouldn't be the end of abortion. Hell, it would barely account for a curtailing of it. Even the most strict states in the U.S., what they've largely said is basically they want to cut back on when you can do it, not stop it altogether. But you wouldn't know that by listening to the white media, why they've been making a lot of hay about it. They've been acting as if the world's coming to an end and that we all need to be watching this. And the reason why is this is what they always do. Whenever there's some pet issue of theirs, they always want to make sure that that's front and center. We all need to drop what we're doing so we can pay attention to that. They always make sure to paint their concerns as being the biggest issues on the planet. The white media coverage makes it out to be as if all the world is chewing its fingernails and waiting with bated breath for the outcome, and they hope that if they hype it to the moon like that, then hopefully we will think that their issues are far more important than what we need too. That way we stop pushing for what we're owed. No matter our demands, they always tell us that there's something more important going on and we just need to move on. Let me tell you something. Our power, and I mean those of us who came out of slavery in this country, our power is not based on access to abortion. It's not based on what pronouns you use, transgender bathrooms, or any of these other pet issues of the white left. Our power is based on our resources, and for 500 years we have been systematically stripped of those resources and denied those resources. That's the only issue that matters for us. Politics is transactional, and it's supposed to be. You got people like Rahm Emanuel and others saying, we got to stop this transactional political thing. We can't have it where it's quid pro quo. No, that's exactly what it's supposed to be. Quid pro quo, something for something. This isn't charity. It's not about goodwill. It's about getting ours. And if they want our support, then they're going to have to make a deal to get it. But given their track record of lies and betrayal, they're going to have to put some things on the table and in our pockets first, before any kind of deal gets struck, because they've already proven that they cannot be trusted. They'll lie through their teeth. We handed them the White House and the Congress last year, and they've gotten an Asian hate crime bill passed. They got that infrastructure bill passed, and that was nothing more than a political payoff and payback to the corporate donor class that funds both parties. But they couldn't get anything done for black people. Black people who delivered Georgia, Michigan, and North Carolina. Without any two of those three states, Biden would not be president right now. And without black people, they would not have Georgia, and they wouldn't have their Senate majority. Everybody else gets tangibles. We get excuses. We gave those clowns everything they wanted, and it's still not enough to hear them tell it. Well, not enough for them to do anything for us. A lot of black people think that it's cute to go find the loudest group of white leftists that they can, or if you happen to be a particularly sniveling type of Negro, you go the Jesse Lee Peterson, Larry Elders route. That's something you get to be their little pink poodle. Hey, here's a black person who actually says that racism doesn't exist and that black people need to stop complaining about the police. Yeah, you can go ahead and be their little sideshow freak for a while. That's what the bottom of the barrel does. The last brain cell in your head is what gets you to do something like that. But truth be told, they didn't have many brain cells to begin with. But you notice that the numbers of black people who are willing to get out there and do that stuff are getting less and less by the day. It's because it's obvious the only thing that black people have been doing is letting ourselves be used to augment the numbers of these other special interest groups. And then as soon as they get what they want, black people are like, great, let us all march over here so we can get some things for black people. And they're like, ooh, look at the time, gotta go. That's unfeasible. Check for what? You think we're going to do something that only benefits black people? No, that's what we get. So it's time for us to make it very clear and be very strident. We don't give a rip about these other people's pet issues. We're not going to let the white media tell us that these other people's hobby horses are somehow the most important pressing issues of the day. We are unapologetic when we say black first. We're putting black first because nobody else does. And because I know that there's always a few such types in the room, for you Negroes who might be here listening to this, who are thinking to yourselves that you're being clever by saying that, well, some of these issues do have overlap with us. Let me tell you something. If these white leftists were really so interested and hot and bothered in getting their agenda passed and making sure that nobody would be able to overturn it later, then they would be supporting our agenda. It is precisely because of the lack of black voter engagement and black voter participation that has made it where you got so many of these states that are able to pull this crap. You want to know why it is the Republicans have majorities in so many of these states, especially in the Deep South? It is because black folks figured out they're not getting anything for their vote. And when people realize that their vote never translates into any sort of action for them, never translates into any sort of tangibles for them, well, you can't pretend to be all surprised and dismayed when those same people decide that they're going to disengage from a process that has never produced results for them. These white leftists who have proven in their turn that they are just as bad as the white right. I mean, all you got to do is take a look at California and the rampant racism out there. They claim to be so liberal, and yet it's in places like San Francisco where you find the most anti-black racism, even though black people are being wholesale ran out of the place. Apparently, a lot of those good white liberals don't feel like black folks are leaving fast enough. Amy Cooper in New York, this woman was a Hillary Clinton supporter. And all of them got their little pet issues. They claim that the environment happens to be one of them. If they're so concerned about man-made disasters and such causing the end of the world, then it would seem to me that it's an easy choice for these white leftists to go ahead and get behind that black agenda. Make sure we get our tangibles so that we are well motivated to keep going to those polls. Why, if they've been able to get the requisite occasional amount of support doing nothing at all, imagine how much more support they would have putting something on the table. But that's the entire point. They already made their peace a long time ago with the idea that if black people are going to have anything, well, they'd rather see the world come to an end. Yeah, they got their things, their pet issues that they can sit around their little coffee parties while they drink a triple mocha latte or what have you, while they've got their soy milk and all the rest of it. They sit around and wax poetic about deconstructionist philosophy. Meanwhile, that to them is just entertainment. It's coffee table talk. They've already had all their concerns taken care of. Resources are not an issue for them, so they have the luxury of sitting around and talking about things that don't matter. And when black people bring up things that actually do matter, well, all of a sudden here come the excuses. They sound no different than the Republicans. We do not care what species of rare spotted owl that they're attempting to try to save this week. We do not care what wetlands that they're concerned might be endangered. We got black folks who are an endangered species right here in the United States. And we're not sitting back seeing whether or not these good white leftists are going to come up with a Greenpeace for us. It's time that we showed them the same blatant contempt for their issues that they've always shown for ours. All of these black folks who call themselves, well, I'm going to go march with, oh, to hell with that. And if somebody brings up, well, there have been a couple of these folk, a couple of them who have been marching with it. No, that ain't good enough. Because you see, whenever black folks get out there with them, they've always got an end game of what they're going to get. And they usually get what they're after. Black people haven't gotten a doggone thing. You cannot name any legislation. You cannot name any tangibles. You can't not name anything that we've gotten. A whole bunch of marching, whole bunch of demonstrating, whole bunch of chanting and singing, and got nothing out of it. No, until that equation changes, far as I'm concerned, we ain't doing nothing with nobody. That's the way it's got to be. The Congressional Congressional Black Caucus, those clowns are the epitome of a do-nothing society. A bunch of professional bench warmers. These guys, they got the numbers where they could bring anything to a standstill in Congress, or at least make it where it's going to be a living hell to get anything through. All they have to do is just decide amongst themselves, this legislation must be put up. Nancy Pelosi is going to catch pure hell. We're going to be demanding that she be voted out as Speaker of the House and anyone else get that seat other than her if we don't get A, B, and C. But of course, as you've seen with nigga Jim Clyburn, only thing the Congressional Black Caucus are concerned about is holding on to their little goodies that they've gotten from their white donors. Making sure that worthless clods like Mignon Clyburn get to keep their consulting gigs, because that's the price of admission. And when black people make it very clear we're going to get what's owed to us, at the very least, you're going to start punishing these white supremacists instead of making it where, well, the court's going to give them court order protection and we're going to make sure that they get transferred somewhere else where you don't know where they are. Instead of the state protecting these white supremacist race killers, they're going to be punished. And Jim Clyburn's leading the charge. Stop sloganizing, sloganizing kills. Never mind the fact that that's a slogan in and of itself. Jim Bojangles Clyburn has made a doggone career out of empty platitudes and slogans.
We need to start making change for real people and helping people and stuff.
That's what he's been doing his entire worthless life. Starting with the murder of Trayvon Martin, people started paying attention to these anti-black murders that have always been taking place. And yet, you didn't have anybody from the Congressional Black Caucus or the Democratic Party who decided that these murders were worthy of a sit-in to do something about it, to call attention to it, until 2016. They finally did a sit-in all right, but it was because there was a mass shooting at an LGBT nightclub in Orlando. That's the reason why they did their sit-in. Where was the sit-in for the black children murdered by the police? Where was the sit-in for all the black victims of this anti-black white supremacist violence? Where was the sit-in for them? Where's the sit-in been at since? Last year, the Democrats took one measly knee in the rotunda of the Capitol, and they were giving some loose talk about police reform proposals. No promises, mind you, just proposals. We're spitballing some ideas. Well, they don't have a congressional majority. They can't do anything without a majority. That's what the Cedric Richmonds and the Roly-Polies and then the Jim Clyburns and the Simone Sanders and other idiots, that's assorted liars. That's what they said. Well, the Democrats don't have a congressional majority, so you can't expect them to do anything. All they can do is sympathize with you. They have to have the power before they can do anything. Well, how very fortunate for the Dems that last year was an election year. And the very black voters who they have been ignoring for decades turned out and handed the Democrats both the Congress and the presidency. And what did the Democrats do with their newfound power? Because after all, that was all they were lacking. They were just chomping at the bit to do stuff for black people and to stick up for us. And once we handed them the power to do so, what did they do? They told us ain't nothing we can do. Biden's so-called lift every voice plan, he ain't mentioned that mess. His presidential level police oversight committee, he punted that over to Nancy Pelosi, and Nancy Pelosi punted it out the door. You ain't heard nothing about that since. Oh yeah, what few promises Biden made, he's already broken those. He made it very clear, whatever you thought you were going to get ain't going to be nothing. Oh, but Biden did announce that there was going to be $350 million in that COVID relief package that would be earmarked for the cities specifically to give to their police departments. Now, Biden did make sure that that happened. And there were no strings attached to this money, by the way. No requirement for the cities to end qualified immunity. He didn't hang that over their heads. Here's $350 million in federal money. The states don't have the ability to print their own money, so the only way you can go into debt, states can't afford to go into debt. They have to have a balanced budget because they don't have the ability to print their own money. So that being the case, only way you can get this money is you gotta play ball. He could have done that. He's done it in the past. He could have told the states, in order to get a piece of this $350 million pie, you must end qualified immunity in your state. He's got them over a barrel. States are bankrupt. They're broke. They got to play ball. They don't have a choice. But he didn't require anything. No requirement to decertify police who have records of violence. No requirement to be transparent about police records. Nothing. Biden has no problem doing that. 25 years ago, when he wrote his 94 crime bill, he paid the states over $12 billion just to go after black people. So Biden is an expert at using the federal budget to pay the states to do what he wants. And his refusal to do that here stands out like a sore thumb. The COVID money was supposed to go to the people. And considering the fact that black people in particular, to hear the white media tell it, we were hit hardest by COVID. And what did Joe Biden do? He put money into the pockets of the very scumbags who have been out here murdering black people in the streets. Barack Obama bailed out the banks, and Joe Biden decided to bail out the bigots with badges. And you ask me why it is I don't give a two-bit dang about any of these white leftist issues, because all they got is their little hobbies, man. That's what these are, political hobbies for them. Well, for us, this ain't a doggone hobby. It is life and death. And they're going to have to treat it with the severity that it requires and deserves. We got to start being bold and in their faces about we don't give a rip about what it is. No more of this, well, guys, we're just going to ignore what you say. No, be in their face about it. Shut the hell up talking about this or that thing. Oh, but what about abortion? You got black folks being murdered in the streets. If you're concerned about a woman's right to choose, how about a black person's right to live? How about that? It's time out for us being all bashful about this thing. You're as insulted as I am whenever you got these clowns, these little suburbanites, the little chuckleheads who only show up whenever they got their little pet issues that they want to pretend to be concerned about so they can try to put on the airs of being an adult. They're trying to impress mom and dad. See, I can do something that's halfway like an adult. See, I'm fighting for a cause. No, they're not fighting for anything because it doesn't